Boaz, you're famous on Wall Street for a number of reasons, among them losing a large amount of money when you worked for Deutsche Bank, but also for betting successfully against the London whale, the trader who himself lost billions of dollars for JPMorgan. Where do those rank among the high points and low points of your career?
Well, look, I think there's different ways to make and lose money. A lot of it is really about the process and the circumstances after. Let's just take March as an example. Leave me out of it for a second. Someone lost money, because they didn't foresee COVID coming. There are many events like 9/11 that literally you can forgive yourself. If you're a harsh critic, of how you did, you can forgive yourself for 9/11, in my view, much easier than COVID, because COVID, you had a month of it getting worse and worse and worse, and the credit market didn't react, and the equity market till about the last few days of February. For me, in 2008, I felt at the time I was about to start the hedge fund, and I felt like, oh, this is terrible timing. It's going to be so hard to raise money in this post '08 world. But in reality, what I was going through at the time, being at Deutsche Bank in credit, was very similar to what my peers in the industry were going through. And we were at the New York Fed that week when Lehman was failing. And with a little bit of history, I actually look at that through the lens of, it was an incredible learning experience. It was an incredible historic experience to be a part of that. And so of course, I wish I would have done better in 2008. But we also had a lot of very strong years, before. And and things like, I'd say, you asked about London Whale. I think one of the things I love most about markets is I view them as a puzzle. And there was something about the London Whale experience that felt to me like something was wrong. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And the kind of detective work around identifying that is certainly a high point in my, at least in my own perspective of my career.
Boaz, you describe yourself as someone who likes to stand out from the pack by doing interesting and unconventional things. What's the next interesting and/or unconventional thing we'll see you do?
What is historically unprecedented and what is the puzzle for me right now is to think about how we have today the VIX at 30, and I'm going to focus on single companies. If that's where the the index is, or the S&P vol as an index, or Russell vol, imagine in single names that there are even bigger distortions, that you have basically companies with vol above 50% implied. You almost never had that in the entire history of investment grade. If you look through the data, pull out outliers and say, how often are investment grade companies that have investment grade low credit spreads, how often do they have implied vol above 50? Basically never. And starting in March 2020, even till now, we have this again. We have now, again, a world of ultra high vol, but what we never had before is ultra high vol and low credit spreads. And so where I'm very focused right now is trying to find ways to play that relationship, to take my credit short and fund it by selling a drop of equity vol, because you don't have to sell very much at these elevated levels to defease the cost of the short. And so something I've been looking at, a relationship for 2 decades, I've never seen it this. I don't want to call it mispriced, because maybe we can explain it. Maybe it's not mispriced, but I would say it's never been this divergent.